Do you want to contribute more? Greetings. What's up? It's Deborah. Happy Friday to you. And I want to tell you a tale of two Deborahs. For those of you who are purpose-driven and disruptive leaders, and you know that you're serious about taking your leadership to the next level, you're going to want to pay attention to this. I think this is really important. And if you have any questions, you can always reach out to me by direct message. I'm happy to answer your questions. So here we go, Tale of Two Deborahs. So when I was back in my previous life as a minister, I spent a lot of time in Bible study and teaching other people about the Bible, and also in just listening to people and offering encouragement and support. Hi, LinkedIn user. I don't know who you are, but welcome. Good morning. And often what I found was, and it was so like textbook, I literally would see two different versions of me. So when I was with the other people, other ministers, and we were talking or we were making plans as to what we were going to do for our community service that day or that week, I would find a shrunken in, more quiet, more reserved, almost resentful version of Deborah. And then when we would be out actually talking to people, and when I was actually conducting my Bible studies or, having conversations with people, finding out what they needed and seeing how we could get resources to them, I would find a completely different version of myself come out, one that was outgoing, enthusiastic, gregarious, funny, just warm, bubbly. And I would look at, and I started to notice this pattern, and it was really distinct, to the point where when other ministers would come with me to someone's house or something, they would be they'd start looking at me funny when I was talking with the person in the house, because they could see such a huge difference between how I was talking with that person and how I would be in the car or, at the religious place. So it came to be very, very obvious that there was a marked difference between Deborah, the minister with other ministers, and Deborah, the minister with the people that she was actually serving. And the two Deborahs, what I noticed was the difference. It took me, because I studied, the engineer in me is always trying to figure out why is it so easy for me to be this way here and so impossible over here? What's going on? It's the same me. It's the same day. I'm wearing the same clothes. I'm eating the same food. There's no difference in anything other than who I'm talking to. Why? What is it? So I studied this for a while. And what I came to understand was that the people I studied the Bible with and the people that I was serving in ministry, they saw me a specific way. And they were welcoming of the service that I was bringing. They were welcoming of my personality. They were welcoming of my presence in a way that did not have any judgment associated with it. It was very just appreciative, true appreciation for what I was bringing to them. And with the other ministers, there was some appreciation, but there was also a level of there was a measuring stick that they were measuring me against, as to how, in two different ways. One was how well I measured up to the expectations of the group, right? What their group cool was, kind of like high school. And then there was also how well I was measuring up to the image of minister that was expected of me. So there were these expectations that were placed on how I was presenting myself, how I was showing up, how I was looking, how I was sounding, what I was saying, what I was doing, how I was doing it. And so what happened is I felt the restriction on being myself. I felt the restriction on just sharing my truth. I felt the restriction on being able to just laugh and relax and be at ease. And I tested this. So it wasn't just something that I was just made up in my head, like a story that I made up in my head, which we can do, right? So I would test it, and I would say something really really Deborah, really, because I'm very, I say really quirky and off the wall things that have a weird sense of humor. And so I would say something that was characteristically Deborah with these other ministers, and I would get like either no response or like, okay, back away slowly. I would get one of these not very welcoming responses. And I would go and I'd say the same quirky thing to like somebody I was ministering to, and they would just be like cracking up and they'd be like, you're the best. And I was like, okay, it's the same thing I'm saying. I'm not saying anything different. Not being a different version of myself, same person, but in one space it's accepted and it's held with regard, and in another space it's looked at in a negative way. Why am I going through all this trouble to explain this story to you? Because I'm sure you have plenty of stories that are equally as and probably far more powerful to share how you feel comfortable and belonging in one group and not in another. But it's really not about belonging with other people. It's about belonging with yourself. So here's the reason why I'm going through the trouble to tell you this story is I felt judged. So I restricted myself. When I didn't feel judged, I didn't restrict myself. So whether other people were judging me or not was not the point. The point is what I felt. It was my experience. There was always validity in it because if I felt it, there was some level of it going on. However, the level that it was going on probably was not the same as the level that I was making it out to be personally. But what I noticed was I would respond based on the responses I was receiving. So it became a co-creative process of me either becoming more of myself or lessening myself. So being in that environment for many years, I did a lot of lessening of myself, subduing of myself, swallowing things down, staying quiet, trying to be submissive, trying to be obedient, trying to be of the quiet and mild spirit, trying to be a mellowed, kind, somewhat perfect, not perfect, but like, together and balanced. And I tried to portray that because that was what, in my mind, I perceived would yield acceptance. But of course, it doesn't actually work like that. So in my mind, I thought that this was going to be what it was needed. But in truth, what was needed was for me to show up unapologetically, which was a lot easier to do with the group of people who I was serving versus the group of people who were my colleagues. So I want to share this. I'm sharing this with you because I want you to understand that judgment or perceived judgment and self-acceptance they're totally inseparable. If you are able to accept yourself, you're going to be able to accept others. And if you're not able to accept yourself, you're not going to feel accepting of others, and you're going to be far more judging of others and of yourself. The judgment is what makes you not accept yourself. When you get into that loop, it just becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, and you get deeper and deeper into this place that's not authentic, and you start to shut down. Thank goodness I was out doing ministry, and the people that I went to serve gave me a contrast. So I was able to see that there was a possibility that I could be a different person. I could be a more expanded and joyful and playful and just truly authentic version of myself if I wanted to be. So then the question was, how did I get to be that person all of the time and not just some of the time? Well, it was a combination of two things. One was spending more time with people who were already easier to hang out with. That was an obvious solution. But the other part was learning where I was telling myself the story that the way I was not acceptable. And that was a process because I kept bringing into my life relationships and situations that were consistently testing to see whether I was going to cave under the expectation of someone else or if I was going to be myself. And the illusion was that if I was myself, that I was going to be rejected. But in truth, that was an illusion because the only person that could reject me was me. And once I learned to accept myself, then I was always belonging with myself. And then it didn't matter who I was with. But naturally, if you're around other people who haven't become accepting of themselves yet, as individuals, it's going to be really hard for them to accept you. And especially if you're accepting of yourself, you're going to naturally repel those people, which is a really good thing. Because when you get to that place where you can accept yourself unconditionally, which I call radical self-acceptance, and you cannot judge yourself, zero judgment, what happens is that you naturally repel the people who are judgmental of themselves and thus will be judgmental of you. And you naturally attract people who are a little bit closer to being accepting of themselves and thus have an easier time being accepting of you. And then it becomes a positive spiral in the other direction. And don't make no mistake, like I got out of the spiral many times and then I'd somehow get back into it with a new relationship or a new situation. I would get back into that self-judgment again and then feeling judged by others and then it just going into this thing where I started to feel compressed and compressed. But the difference was now I could notice when I was feeling that compression, that urge to suppress myself to please someone else, I started to be able to notice what that felt like in my body. And when I was able to notice what it felt like in my body, I was able to say, uh-oh, what's going on? Where am I accepting other people's rules and expectations and putting them on myself when that's not really who I am? There's a story around this, around parenting. I would love to share it at a future time. If you're interested, type parenting in the comments and I will share it at a future time because I see this happening to a lot of people that I work with and that I talk to who are parents, and the massive amounts of guilt that especially moms feel when we feel like we have to be like we can't, if we want to be something and the first thing that we think of is not being a mom or being a parent, that there's something, inherently wrong with us, and there isn't. I'll speak about that on another time. But for today, what I'd love for you, if you're a purpose-driven or a disruptive leader or both, what I'd love to hear from you is if you can relate to this. If there's been a situation where you have wanted to contribute, you wanted to give to others, and you felt like you couldn't be yourself. And instead of focusing on the negative, I'd like to hear when you were able to contribute to others, were you being more or less of yourself? Were you constraining yourself, or were you able to expand and be more of yourself when you were contributing to others? I would love to read your thoughts in the comments. I think this is an incredibly important foundational observation that people don't take the time to make, and it's quite simple. It's just looking at your own life. When I've been really proud of myself, when I've made a huge impact, when I've done something that really touched other people's lives in a way that I felt super, super good about, was I being more of myself or was I being less of myself? I want you to think about that, really think about that, because this is how we make an impact in the world. This is how we push forward our purpose and our mission. And this is how we see momentum, is when we are really noticing in what areas we're being more authentic and what areas we're being less authentic. It's incredibly important to be aware of this, to notice how it feels in your body, because other people's lives, those people that you're here to touch, you might not touch them if you're too busy constricting yourself to fit into someone else's expectations. And it's okay if you at your best goes against societal norms. That's okay. My goal is to see more people going against societal norms and actually living their fullest and doing the thing that they're here to do that serves so many more people than following societal norms and missing out on making that impact at the level that they're here to make. So I hope this was inspiring for you, and enjoy your weekend. Much love.